I spend some time. The way I use social media is to find people who are moving the needle. It's nice to participate in like which ice cream should go, and get involved with Cardi B's dropping a new thing with Lizzo, and get involved with all of the should the baby be canceled. But I think it's more important that we find the people who are talking about the things that matter to us, and that Crown Act we've been talking about for the last 4 years on this show. So I'm glad you did that video, and you've done many others. So I was like, let me see what this brother is working with. Let me bring him on the show. So first of all, where are you from? Because you got that southern twang.
Born and raised in Bryan, Texas. Shout out to everybody in Bryan, College Station, Texas. South is like Central East Texas, about an hour and a half from Houston.
Okay, so y'all been doing Juneteenth.
Oh yeah,
y'all
yeah, yeah.
y'all
That's
been
yeah,
done did. Yes,
yeah. That
Juneteenth
was the
has
biggest
been
day in
part of
my
your
in
culture.
my hood growing up. Yeah, that was the biggest day really the biggest day in the Black community in my city growing up was with the Juneteenth parade.
So how do you feel now that it's been co-opted? Excuse me, it's been made a federal holiday.
To be honest with you, the given the timing, I think that it kind of exposed the insidious nature of anti-blackness. You feel me? Because on one notion, it's like y'all should stay out the past, and we should always think about how great our legal system is. But understanding the history behind Juneteenth, it's like, hey, what does it mean for you to pass the Emancipation Proclamation and us Black folks down in Texas? That didn't mean nothing to us. You feel me? And especially when you couple that in a timing of saying we not gonna teach about how race and our legal system go together, aka critical race theory. So for me, you feel being a Texan that grew up in race, I always wanted to see this as a federal holiday, but right now it just kind of feel weird because it's like I ain't like as an educator, I can't even respond to my student. You feel me in the state that I live in without thinking about losing my job and or being sued because I'm breaking the law in terms of talking about the policy making process and how Black folks always on one side of it.
So is that real? Like, are you? And as you're talking, George, and you're at the University of Oklahoma. You also you're teaching social issues, but you're also teaching debate on these social media policies. I'm reading about it. I was just having this conversation yesterday. Teachers can be sued because students feel they feel bad about themselves, or you're singling them out. If they're white, so-called white, they can sue you. And I'm thinking, prayer in school, some people will appreciate this. This is how ironic it is. Prayer in school got removed because a parent, an atheist parent, felt like their child was being indoctrinated, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. So today, nobody prays in school. Now, I may agree with that. At the same time, those very same people who would be like, railing for prayer in school are saying we want no real history in school. We don't want you to tell the history if it makes anybody feel bad and they can actually sue you. Do you think about that?
Not only do I think about it, just to add more to what you just said, these the same folks that was fighting tooth and nail about statues, saying that we can't change history, saying that it's heritage, not hate, saying like to me, it just don't make sense. It's what I call conservative contradictions. Because on one notion, it showed that you really ain't read nothing. You feel me? You don't know no critical race theory scholars, no authors, no books, because you have an individualized criticism. So that tells me you haven't read anything about critical race theory because it's not about an individualized perspective. It's about systemic institutional criticisms. And you want to center around individuals. So that's the first thing. The second thing is like, hey, you just talked about how we can't change history. You feel me? So now how are we going to talk about the Three-Fifths Compromise? How are we going to talk about the Fugitive Slave Act and the Chinese Exclusion Act without getting into the racial? It don't make sense.
I'm baffled by what we do. So I covered education with the Daily News on the editorial board for 3 years. And I thought then that the education system needed to be dismantled. That was 20 years ago. I felt like this education system that predicated upon regurgitation of set of facts that may not be facts that I have to now, be tested and scored on. And based on the test, my school gets funding or doesn't get funding, which then put educators in a position to cheat, some of them, to make sure that they got their funding, but it still left us with a bunch of people who didn't know anything. So I was like, this system doesn't work, right?
It
So
don't work.
how did you get into it? How did you become an educator?
I think I always had an argumentative nature about myself that was always asking questions. I feel like I've always been what I call a argumentative loud learner. You feel me? You know, the person in the classroom that always got something to say, that's always raising their hand. Like I was that student. So I think that I always had an inquisitive mind. But what happened was I walked on to the University of Oklahoma debate team and learned that I actually had a little gift the gab in terms of being able to debate. At first, I got beat on a lot and quit and cried and couldn't deal with it. But eventually, I figured it out and ended up being in the top 20 of the decade in terms of the Hall of Fame. What happened was through me doing this activity is I figured out that through me being invited to teach at summer debate camps, that I actually love learning. I actually love being in the classroom. You feel me? I got to learn a lot about myself and a lot about the world. So me getting to learn about race, class, gender, ability, sexuality, the political, social, economic implications of the Black community, I really started being able to develop a language, and I started being able to develop, I feel like, a way to navigate the world. So whether, no matter who I was talking to, I was always trying to figure out ways that I can learn from them or they can learn from me. And just, I figured out as a way I could feed my family, you feel me, and pay the bills. And you know what I'm saying? Here I am.
Consciously, the Consciously on Twitter, georgeleespeaks.com is the website. He's an educator in University of Oklahoma right now, but I think it's beyond, because if you follow him on Twitter, he's not just educating those folk there, he's educating all of us. I look at you, and I don't see a stereotypical teacher. You got locks, you say you feel me, a lot.
Yeah,
And it's like I I feel like this is what we need, though, right? Because you come from the culture, and not
yeah,
just from the culture, because I don't even want to put you in that box. You're yourself, authentically yourself, teaching
yeah. It's
what you
important
learn.
that I think that it's important that younger Black people and people of color, that the world tells them the way that we learn to express ourselves in our community, that it's illegitimate, that it's not credible, that it's not political, that it's not cool. I think it's ways for us that have kind of been through the trenches, that come from those areas, to still show a way that we can be sincere and genuine with who we are. I think that when I got into the University of Oklahoma and I got into being around college, I battled a lot internally and externally with respectability politics. And for people that don't know what I mean by that, that's just our ability to appeal to mainstream standards or make us feel like we got to take parts of ourselves off. So I've been growing my hair, I've been growing my locks for like 15 years. And though I was like class president and homecoming king and prom king in high school, I always got asked about really would I cut my hair to get a job or this, that, and the other. And I always felt like if I have the skills, my skills and my perspective should pay for what it is, and whatever else other thing I'm not dealing with. It got to a point where I got tired of code switching, and it got to a point where I felt like what I know is what I know, and you can debate me about it. So I feel like once I started seeing that I was empowering other people that feel like, man, you showing me it's a way for me to be present in the academy. It's a way for me to be present in the job market. It's a way for me to be present on social media, and I can be myself. That's what it is. Because a lot of my white colleagues, they do that. You feel me? They rock. They still do the same thing. They still speak the same way they spoke when they were 19. They just added a little bit of academic jargon. You feel me? They still rock the same clothes they rocked when they was in grad school now. And it's just like, I'm gonna come the same way. And it's just like, I dare you to debate me on the merits on why I should or should not be able to do that.
Love it. All right. George Lee is here. So you are preparing, ramping up for this semester's policy debate team, which you are also leading at the University of Oklahoma. What topics, what policies are on the agenda for this semester?
This year topic is all about trust funds. You know what I
Oh,
mean? The season just starting, so we're just getting into our research. But this year is a domestic topic, and we're gonna be getting into federal trust funds. So learning about the antitrust Sherman, like pretty much learning about the three major federal landmarks in terms of how we do business, how we conduct commerce, and things like that. And then one of the unique things that we do with the University of Oklahoma is we're known as being one of the top critical teams. So a lot of my students are going to take settler colonialism or heteronormativity or anti-Blackness or capitalism, take criticisms of those things and think about how trust law, how the policymaking process in terms of doing trust and who gets to determine what, who gets access to it. They're going to be looking at it from that perspective. Now, of course, we're going to debate the Harvards and the USCs of the world, and we'll get the traditional policy making things. But for the most part, you know what I'm saying, in my university, you feel me, in my debate team, we kind of get more critical.
I'm thinking, so debate is an elective, right? The debate team, is that an elective? It's not, or is it a major? Can you major in debate?
It's just an extracurricular activity. You feel me? As a matter of fact,
So they don't even get credit? Wait, hold on. They don't even get credit?
Nah, yeah, you can't get credit. You can't get credit. You can get credit, you feel me, for taking debate classes. You do not get credit for going to debate tournaments in terms of debate, getting credit for that, but you can get a tuition fee waiver or a scholarship for participating on the debate team. So look at the debate team at universities as being like football or basketball. It's an extracurricular activity that if you do it well enough, it can subsidize and or pay for entirely your academic experience, you feel me? And or it's just to really just enrich your academic experience while you're at the university, you feel me?
Because as you're explaining this, I'm like, why isn't every course taught through a debate lens? Why isn't every course taught, especially history?
Education is elevation, you know what I'm saying? Ms. Hunter, and let me tell you something. Last year, I worked 9th and 10th grade English at alternative high school. You feel what I'm saying? And being at this alternative high school, I taught mostly Black and brown children. Most of my students came from boys' home, juvenile home, girls' home. It was freshly kicked out of some, you know what I'm saying, some school in the district. What I found is that there are a lot of different skills, what we call them in debate, portable skills. There are a lot of portable skills that will be against the curriculum and or be against, you feel me, the way in which we want to teach standards. I think that the way that debate taught me how to critically think and think outside of the box, I recognize that for a lot of people that want to push policies that say we shouldn't teach critical race theory, they wouldn't be interested in teaching students this type of way of being able to think.
Yeah, but I'm imagining, all right, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. You take this, you guys study this, you guys, now let's come together. Who had the best strategy to free Black people? Let's go. And in the process, they're going to learn about both, because you got to study the opponent. You got to study all of the things. You got to read all of the books. You got to be able to come to the table ready. And as a result, now you build on that, and then you rinse and repeat with the next group of people or theories, right? And now you have a base of knowledge. I don't even understand why this isn't the college credit. Like,
see, but I think that when we talk about argumentation, it starts to expand the possibility for what can be. You feel me? And when I got to go back to K through 12 and teach, I've been knowing this, you've been knowing this too, and I'm about to say, but when you think about it in the big picture and simplify it, it's like, hey, white kids can go through public school with a 4.0 and be seen as the greatest student and be seen as a great, you feel me, scholar. And they don't have to know anything about Black history. They don't have to know who W.E. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington is, let alone what their disagreement was. You feel me? There is no way for you, I, or any of my students to be seen as a great student or a great scholar without knowing what the white people have accomplished and or conquered here in America or the world. So when you pose that question about debate, it opens up the question of why are we learning? What are we learning? Who determines what are we learning? You know what I'm saying? It's a word that I learned in grad school called pedagogy. Pedagogy is the process of learning. And once we start to ask critical questions about who learns what, why do we learn that, where does it get us to, the values and standards of that, it starts to get us into questions that people don't, that people in power feel like it should be undebatable. Because then we start thinking about the legitimacy of America and colonialism, and we start thinking about the legitimacy of the system you're talking about in terms of schooling. It's like, on the colony, do you go to the colony to learn how to get away from the colony, or do you go to school on the colony to learn how to make the colony better? The latter, you feel me? And it's just like, that's how education goes. If you went to the schoolhouse at a slaughterhouse, they're gonna teach you how to make the slaughterhouse run better. If you go to school at a plantation, anybody going to the school at the plantation, they're gonna learn how to make the plantation run better. And that's really how American school system works. You know that.
Well, what do we do about it? Conscious Lee is here. His name is George. I love this man's mind. And you know, as we start to contemplate it, because I get so many emails. I do this thing called In Class with Carr on Saturdays with Dr. Gray Carr, and it has messed me up from this standpoint that you realize you can go to school, you can read all of these books that they tell you to read, you know, because you got to read these books in order to be considered, you know, well read. This is the canon, right? They give you the canon, and there's certain books on there, and then half them books are racist, or let's not say racist, anti-black, because somebody also said let's not call it racist because racism people tune out. They're anti-black, so that you're now and the other black books that they may put on there are written for a white audience, right? So even if you're reading Richard Wright or you know somebody like that, he's not writing for us. You know, he's writing for a white acceptance or to appeal to that because that's who's publishing and that's who's reading. So that goes on the canon. But then it's like, what are we setting ourselves up for, right? Because then you have to like question everything that I've learned. What's the value of it? You know, if we're trying to free ourselves. So I'm like, I had to dismantle all of that and start from scratch, but it's daunting, right? And it's also scary because you have to now question everything. And I'm getting so many email and comments from people saying that they are so angry that they, you know, some people have PhDs and masters and stuff. They mastered the very thing that would keep us in bondage. It is like infuriating. Why didn't I learn this in school? Well, you're not going to learn this in school because that does not serve this criminal enterprise, right?
It don't. It's just like, what? It's like literally, you think master don't teach the slaves how to get off the plantation and how to live without him? No. A part of the conditioning of the education in the curriculum is going to be able to set a complex that says you have to go through X, Y, and Z to get to this, and it's not going to be going over there. So I'm thinking of this in terms of being from the hood. You feel me? I recognize at a very young age that my family and my homeboys, they measure success based off of proximity. So I can see I'm only seeing that successful based off of how far I'm away from the black folks. You feel me? And my success is seen as the closer I am to whiteness and white people, the more successful I'm seen. So when teams come to thinking about what it means to have mobility, what it means to have access, a lot of times we measure that based off of distancing from black people. That's textbook anti-blackness. And that's the reason why we should use the terminology of anti-blackness, because it centers what are we doing to blackness and black people, and it doesn't center whiteness and white people. Because when we talk about racism, that's when we start getting into the miseducated pathologies of, well, anybody can do X, Y. You ain't got time to get in there. When we start talking about anti-blackness, we're talking about a system of domination that's structured in opposition to black people. And when we start thinking about it from that perspective, I feel like what we do with it, to me, I think that Huey P. Newton taught me that power is the ability to define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. So as long as I'm understanding how I'm positioned by power and thinking about how power runs through me and around me, I think that I have power to do something about it. I feel like how I think about this in my pessimistic mind to still move optimistically, even though I'm pessimistic at heart, is to think about, hey, the world is anti-black and white supremacist and sexist and homophobic and all this stuff, but I ain't gonna sit around and cry about it, you feel me? I'm gonna figure out how can I define the times around me instead of me being defined by what's going on around me. That's what we can do about it, you feel me? When I'm making content and you see my face or you hear my voice, just know you about to get you an upper division college course. You ain't gotta take no SAT. You ain't got to take no ACT. You ain't got to do no enrollment. All you got to do, if you want to take some notes out, put it out, or just give me an undivided attention and recognize something to make you think differently about something that you've been thinking about your whole life. And hopefully it gives a call to action for you to do something about it. You feel me? And the more we start to figure out what we can do about it, the better we'll start figuring out the problem. My motto is research over research. So instead of getting in your feelings, you feel me? Go figure out what's going on and figure out how to define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner.
George Lee, he speaks, georgeleespeaks.com, The Conscious Lee on Twitter. All right, what do you think confronting, we have an election cycle coming up, 2022, which I'm pretty sure is going to define the rest of this country's history, whether or not she survives. And then 2024, that will be the death knell or the savior. I don't know. What do you define right now, George, as the biggest obstacle that we have to overcome, or the biggest thing that's in the way of progress or freedom?
Right now, I think the biggest thing that they're getting our way right now is us being just lost in the sauce of the status quo and what's going on, and making it where we start to be reactionary instead of us being, I feel like proactive. And when I say lost in the sauce, to me, that just means that, you don't really know what's going on, but you're moving like in a rat race. I think that if we were able to figure out what's going on in our communities locally, we wouldn't be so lost in the sauce of this national sensation, like sensationalizing of the presidency. It's like, if you care about food stamps, if you care about HUD, if you care about who running the county jail, if you care about them potholes in your streets, you should care more about these midterm elections than you care about who they sensationalizing and who they pumping billions of dollars into the TV to tell you to be the presidency. Now, I'm not saying the presidency doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that you should prioritize the policymaking process in terms of local policymaking and thinking about, okay, we recognize Black folks is more likely to be incarcerated. You feel me? We have to also recognize. I'm sorry, my wife's calling me. I think I just got verified on the app. She just sent me somebody a check, so you know what I'm saying. We're gonna hopefully we're gonna be celebrating.
Right. Come on,
you know what I'm
yes.
saying? But what I know though is that there's a lot of disorganization in our community, and I think that we gotta think about internally and externally how that disorganization comes about. I say it simply like that. You feel me?
I do. I absolutely feel you. A
You
lot of
don't feel me
this,
though. You don't feel me.
I
You
do.
don't feel
A
me.
lot of disorganization comes from. I absolutely feel you. Not with my hands, with my heart. A lot of disorganization is disinformation that has been pumped into the community. I was listening earlier to one of the shows on this channel, and the host was talking about there's like 12 sites, 12 bots or sites that is pumping information into Facebook directly into the Black community. We know in 2016, I actually had one of my former students from Hunter was targeted by one of these Russian bots to create this, this black, fear thing about what's happening with the Democratic Party. I've just talked today about QAnon. This man killed his 2 children based on some theory that's been pumped in. So it's not just us being, being the target. It's all of this disinformation. And my thing is like, how do we combat that? And then you're telling me about your debate team. And I was like, that seems to be a good way to combat this misinformation. Talk a little bit about strategy and how we can do that.
I think that really to me, the Huey P. Newton quote to me is so powerful. When I heard it at 19, to me, it showed me how the world works. Define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. I feel like if you're interested in learning about how misinformation operates and learning how social media uniquely perpetuates this misinformation in our society, I'll go to Netflix and check out this documentary called, I think, The Social Experiment.
That's
and in
right.
The Social Experiment, it's gonna break down exactly what happened with this quote unquote tainting of the election from the Russians. It's gonna get into misinformation. It's gonna get into, you feel me, a lot of ways of how the algorithms work and into how a lot of us get pimped out in terms of psychological manipulation to be bought out in terms of misinformation. Man, we seen that, folks, if you cared about, if you thought that the land moon was fake, the world is flat, what's the, you know what I'm saying? What's some more like we know that if you type that in the internet is a big index. So once the internet see the type of mindset or perspective you have, now they can give you specific ads that's curated specifically towards you and your perspective. So what the Russians was able to take advantage of, if you were an American that thought about the world being flat, you feel me? They say you in conspiracy theories. So we know you easy on conspiracy theories. So we finna sell you some. Here goes some Hillary Clinton emails. Here goes some, you feel me? And now that is what you own. So I feel like the Huey P. Newton quote, define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. This is phenomenon you want to learn about how the internet be tricking folks out of their position, how the internet be having folks. You know what I get tired of? You know what I'm saying? I'm just kidding. I want to talk about Black people, right? There's somebody on the internet when they come at me, well, brother, we not really Black, we Hebrew. But brother, we not really Black, we Moor. But brother, we not really Black, we Aboriginal. And it's just like, hey, fam, I don't have time to play these identity politics games with you because my understanding of anti-Blackness is it don't matter. So I respect what you want to be. Just don't tell me what I am, and let's have this work. But because boys be so lost in the sauce and power and domination, they have to want to beat me at who I am. You feel me? All consciously, you talk about this, so you feel me? And I think that's one of the things that irritate. But going back to the question you asked, and I'm trying to end this, I'm ranting now. You feel me? If you want to learn about the internet, specifically social media, Social Experiment is a great source to start off on, and you can learn about what they call psychological manipulation and how social media is the most lucrative industry in world history.
In world history, you better say, woo, man. I wish, I look at the Zuckerbergs and the Bezos and I said, man, what would it take for us to equal and opposite react? Like, is it possible? And it's so hard to build. I'm in the midst of building something right now. And every day I question myself at some point, because I'm like, this it's becoming unwieldy with the amount of work that is required, because it's so hard. But in an instant, you can destroy. Like in an instant, it takes nothing to put out all manner of lies and destroy and take down folk and take down, dismantle and feed people poison. They love, we'll munch on that all day. To feed good
All
food,
day.
because it takes a while for that good food to catch up with your health. It's not quick enough. It's not instant. It's not the instant gratification of that hit of Coke or that hit of sugar or that hit. It's not instant. I'm ranting too, but
Hey,
I'm
but sometimes you have to do it, because that expression is most of the time how I'm able to put together some of my best thoughts. You know what I'm saying? Just by thinking about something, just really as I'm speaking, the thoughts just coming off my, what I'm saying, really off my tongue, off my lips. I'm thinking like, well, damn, I ain't never thought about it like that. You know, so sometimes I think you have to do it.
All right, tell me about George. Brought up in Texas. And I know you're married now because your wife called during the
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
When I had this interview last night, and he was like, well, tell me about yourself. And I'm like, telling you about me doesn't tell you who I am, because that's a journey that I'm still on.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
people want to take your biography and checklist it out, and so that they can put you in a space that they can understand you instead of getting to know you. Like, that's a journey. So take us on a
Agreed.
little bit. Take us on a little journey of how you got here.
Man, see, how would I start the journey? I think at a young age, I always thought about being able to break cycles and being able to do something different. Both of my parents, you feel me, come from humble beginnings. I was born and raised in a community that was high in police presence and low in employment. You feel me? So when I was growing up, I always wanted to figure out ways in which how I could live my life as an adult in a way that was better than how I was living as a child, and want to figure out a way from when I had kids, they didn't have to go through the things I had to go through. So from me figuring out trial and error, and me being a junior and my father being George Lee Sr., I was able to see a lot of trial and error around me. And I always felt like if somebody else make the mistake for me, I ain't got to make it myself. So I think I was able to learn a lot about a lot from the people around me. You know what I'm saying? I was raised around a lot of aggression, a lot of hustling, a lot of different things. I think I'm a product of my environment, but I've always been adamant on me being able to choose the type of product that I become. You know what I'm saying, or that I'm becoming, coming from the place that I come from. Um, in high school, I started figuring out my way that I had, that I like public speaking. I feel like that I was a people person, kind of a social butterfly, some would put it. And I started figuring out a lot of the ways that boys use insults, and you know what I'm saying, in my hood wasn't really insulting to me. And once I seen the power of me being able to dictate how words hit me, I started seeing it at a young age that I can do what I want to do. You feel me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like now I'm a grown man from the hood that talk about Black trans women. It's a lot of people in my community that think I'm full of stuffy flush down toilets, and or I'm trying to emasculate the Black man or this, that, and the other. But because I'm grown and I know who I am, I have a knowledge of self, and I have all this, I feel like, conditioning that I've been blessed and highly favored with in terms of being able to deal with stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's the man I am today, the man I am now in terms of moving how I move. It's like, if I'm right, leave me alone. If I'm wrong, then set me right. Other than that, I'm gonna move how I move, and I'm trying to, almost like in the most humblest way I can say possible, move to the beat of my own drum. Like, that's, you feel me, move to the beat of my own drum and be very unapologetic about it. I can
Love
be
it.
wrong. I can be corrected. I make mistakes. I'll be able to acknowledge that I make mistakes. I still want to define the times that I live in and not be defined by the times I live in. And I really don't care about what nobody got to say about me. You feel me? Like, I'm an acquired taste. I'm not for everybody. I'm not willing to add a little bit of salt or a little bit of sugar so you can taste me a little bit better. Maybe I'm not this taste for you. You feel me? In conclusion, I recognize that how the education system is set up is very flawed, but it's a few things that we can understand how life works. It's a reason why there are multiple teachers that teach the same subject, because it's different teaching styles and different learning styles. If my teaching style ain't for you, maybe I ain't the educator for you. But that don't mean it don't negate what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And that's the reason why I'm stay unapologetic with it.